when you're ready.
CPM.
so, um, so,
So
uh, oh,
I'll toss a
CPM.
quick
Sorry,
a talk.
sorry.
I'll toss. No, no, you're good. I'll toss a quick something I learned today. Actually, reading a book. I'm just finishing up a book called Atomic Habits, and they talk about when shoot, it was called Goodhart's rule, and I talk about it all the time. Goodhart's law of metrics. Has anybody heard of this? It basically says when a measure becomes a metric, it ceases to be a good measure. And so that's pretty powerful as you're kicking this room off, Marcus. I love the concept.
One more time. Say that one more time.
So
So,
Goodhart's law it says when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So when we're measuring something, like the classic, tell me how you measure me, and I'll tell you how I perform. Um, but this one is saying, hey, when we start, shooting for metrics, they're not metrics at all.
I like that idea. We are now currently live, streaming on our social platforms. So, Adam, the reason why I asked you to repeat is for the rest of the audience to be able to hear that statement of yours. Um, and today we're going to be talking about culture change and the weaponization of metrics. Um, as we are embracing Agile, Scrum, uh, developing KPIs for organizations and things like that. Some of these metrics were supposed to be meant for helping us with culture and being able to improve our processes. Um, but as we progress, sometimes we end up becoming and setting up cultures of blame for ourselves. And I just wanted to share some of some of the stories and use some stories that we've had from our personal experience. You can use life experience stories of um, trying to set up things with good intentions, uh, and the cult the culture it ends up shifting into a situation of blame. My name is Marcus Turner. I am one half of Constructor. I run Constructor with my wife Brittany over to my right, and we are very interested in collaboration practices, shared risk, shared reward processes, and trying to get people to overall better improve the entire life cycle within the building industry. So no matter where you're at, as you're talking about construction to facilities management or even on passing on to asset management. So as we work together to build a better society and smarter cities.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks for kicking it off, Marcus. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing stories from individuals about situations where they've experienced uh, metrics that either they've been tracking or somebody else has been tracking about something they're involved with that has backfired. This is really really interesting. Marcus, I'm racking my brain. I think I might have a one or two that I think I'm willing to share here as part of our conversation. But just to kind of follow up on the introductions, I'm Brittany Campbell-Turner, CEO and founder of Constructor. And we are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and last but not least, we are also on LinkedIn. Um, Yep, it looks I just double checked. We're online on all those platforms. I will be shortly putting the Clubhouse link in the chat to make sure that you guys who are listening out there in live stream land to be able to join us as part of the conversation. We always have interesting thoughts for the people we have here in the room. So, and actually, we also have a couple newbies. So, welcome to the conversation. We're looking forward to jumping in. So, with that, Adam, if you wanted to introduce yourself and if you have any initial thoughts on how metrics have been used in a weaponizing way, we'd love to hear both, both your intro and your story.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brittany. So Adam Hoots, I've been in operations from a construction standpoint for over 20 years. I started as a plumber. I tried the architect route. I found a home in general construction, CM, construction management. Um, Huge advocate for the trades. And so this topic is very personal to me. We talked a little bit about how folks, the CPM. But from a scheduling standpoint, I think the one thing for me that's weaponized the most is when we start talking about Last Planner, which is supposed to be a lean, short interval planning tool, and we collect PPC or percent plan complete, which is often misrepresented as a grading system, right? So there's different philosophies on how where the sweet spot is, whether we want 100% or 80%, and so when we say weaponizing metrics, that's the first one that pops into my head is the last planner system and percent plan complete, and whether or not we're really using the metrics in such a way that we're making the whole project better, or whether we're beating up on one trade partner for not pulling their weight. So that's kind of where my head goes, Brittany, when you start talking about weaponizing metrics.
That's certainly a good one, Adam. Thanks for sharing. Um, I think it's been an interesting year, um, because we've learned a lot about schedule and potential impacts. Let's say year and a half because of the pandemic. Um, I know I've personally had to shut down projects because of people actually getting COVID, and we got into situations where we wanted to make sure that it wasn't spreading. So we had to shut down the project, and we actually did that 3 times just to make sure everybody was safe, and thankfully, we could afford the time, and thankfully, our partners, our consultants worked with us to make up time as well, even though we weren't necessarily, quote, unquote, "in a rush," because many of our, employees were, um, working from home. This is at my daytime employer. So yeah, that's definitely something that we learned quickly how to adapt to. But now that we're in all these supply chain concerns, um, hopefully it's looking up sooner than later. But we still have the concerns, and there's lots of trickle down effects when it comes to supply chain. Depending upon the product, depending upon where it is originally manufactured, where the parts and pieces come from. So there's just so many things that contribute to this time conversation that we could certainly go down the rabbit hole with. Um, a lot of these things are out of our hands, um, as far as what we're able to, quote unquote, control. But at the end of the day, um, there's still a culture question out here, right? It's how do you manage through all the uncertainty? And then how do you decide to respond to the changes that are taking place, that ultimately impact a project? So I think that's really what we're wanting to get into here. And actually Ife hopped on the call a little bit before we got started and was talking about how he's interested. He's based in Nigeria, and he's interested in building a prop tech community there, in order to get people more interested in smart buildings and kind of building that community there. So I think just even on the property metric side, there's a cybersecurity concern when it comes to collecting data, particularly, and how do you use that data once you have it. So just kind of giving you some ideas of perhaps where the topic of data can pull from, if you will. It doesn't have to be limited to design or construction. It could be all the way from when you're transacting a real estate deal, or even during facilities management when you're reviewing what's taking place in a facility. So, with that, we invite anyone who's in the audience, Ife, Ryan, Alon, and Mackie. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but we invite you, even if you don't have a story, to share your thoughts about perhaps even concerns about how data could be used where it's concerning. And we do have Nineveh in the room as well. Welcome, Nineveh.
Hey Brett, how you doing?
Good to have you. Um, we'll reset the room in here in a little bit, but
Great.
generally, we're talking about different ways that metrics could be weaponized to incite blame on people. So I'll let your juices start flowing. If you have a story or a concern, would love to hear from you in a little bit after you get some time to get your head wrapped around that that thought there. So I guess Marcus,
Sounds
yeah,
great.
yeah, no worries, Nineveh. I guess Marcus, over the years, you've heard me, you've heard me vent many times. Is there anything particular that you wanted to kind of get my response going on anything in particular?
I mean, I think you guys can go back and forth with this, talking about the critical path method with you and Adam. I think that would be just more fun to kind of go through and think of ways that that has been weaponized. Uh, Thank you, Felipe. I also want to give a shout out to Adam as well for volunteering to take the 6 a.m. Eastern slot for Thursday's room in prop tech. So thank you, Adam, for being able to do that, and I welcome you to the team as well.
Absolutely. No, I love it. I appreciate that, Marcus. That opportunity is huge. I look forward to contributing, and you've upped my game tremendously. Hopefully, by not this Thursday, but the next Thursday, I'll be able to Felipe style a little bit of it. We'll see. But I don't know if this is quite the room for the CPM discussion. Although Felipe, it's kind of getting closer a little bit. I will tell you, Brittany, I love what you said with regards to metrics and remembering that they're measures, right? They're only measures of current conditions. They're measures of current processes and or systems, and so they're really feedback, right? So they're feedback on how well we're currently doing, and that feedback needs to be used not necessarily in a fashion where we're disrespecting people, but in a fashion where hey we respect people and we have this information and we're collecting it in a non-biased and respectful way, and we're going to use it to make our processes better. And I know in construction we often miss that kind of that aspect of it. Too often we're collecting all this data and then we look around and we're like, oh man, who can we beat with this data, right? Like who's not performing? And that's one of the reasons I guess I enjoy the last planner because you're putting work on the wall, right? And Felipe is here from a Scrum perspective. We're visualizing the workflow from a last planner, and so you don't need to weaponize, the PPC or the metrics surrounding how well are we doing as a team, because the team is going to realize who's that one that you're keeping having to reschedule their work, and who's the one that's not finishing their areas on time. Those bad apples will really weed themselves out, quite honestly. So again, as an industry, I think we can do a better job as far as remembering, hey, these metrics, this data that we're collecting, that's great, but the thing to do with it is to figure out how we can improve our processes and systems, and then again, right, double checking what are we measuring. Um, and confirming that what we're measuring is truly a mark of performance. Um, and just for um, Felipe's ears, I guess I'll repeat it, and those of you that are logging on here now as well. But the Goodhart's law of metrics, right? When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So when people are aiming for the measures, we're not measuring things. We've now set targets, and so those are very different than metrics. Um, Again, I think that's important that we keep that. Tell me how you measure me, and I'll tell you how I perform. That we need to stay away from that. We need to perform, and then we measure performance to understand current conditions or standardized, right? Or sustaining, and then we can optimize it. Then we can make things better. And so that mindset's few and far between from a construction perspective through my eyes. That's Adam, and I'm done talking here. We'll turn the floor.
Hey, welcome,
Oh,
Felipe.
perfect. Just
Just wanted to make sure
thank you,
you
Brittany. It's
you
so
got
good to be here.
I know, right? I just wanted to make sure you got the topic of discussion before we roll in. I guess I could quickly reset. I know Nineveh joined a little bit later, so I'll reset for the both of you. And then also for those, we have 3 people watching online. For those of you who are online, we do have the Clubhouse invite in the chat. You can join us on Clubhouse. Let us know if you need an invite. But we're talking about what does it mean to use metrics in the right way, in a good way. But how in the past have you seen? Do you have a story that you can share where where you've seen a metric utilized in a negative way where it's inciting blame? So just to kick it off, those are um, that's really the reset. And I will pass it over to Felipe if you have something. Oh, next
Brittany,
time.
I've been both a victim of metrics and a user of metrics for culture change. I've been on both sides of it. And so my name is Felipe Engineer and Manriquez. I work for a large general contractor, McCarthy Building Companies, and I also host the EBFC Show podcast, all about construction, making the industry better. And I am so happy to have noticed that this was going down so I could jump in here and give my 2 cents. I've got a story to share for sure on how metrics can be bad. I'm going to quote one of my most favorite mentors of all time, William Edwards Deming, who taught us to drive out fear in an organization. Anywhere where fear exists, you will have the wrong metrics and people playing games with the metrics. So if your project team, whether you're on a developer side, financing, anywhere in the construction supply chain, if fear exists in your team, count on your metrics to be inaccurate every single time. They're not going to be right. They won't be accurate. I was just talking to somebody this week that does uh, analytics for a living for a construction company, and the person had said, like, I'm going to share some stories with you that you can never tell people my name for fear of being fired. I mean, that was just the conversation within the last 7 days, Brittany and Marcus. So fear exists in this person's organization, and one of the things that they said, they're struggling with their job to just get metrics on a portfolio level because the people that they're working with are also afraid. And there is a culture of don't mess things up. And since we're being recorded, I don't want to have to use when I'm using bad language. So appreciate all the people out there listening. You don't have to put up with my type of foul language today. But what the problem is with metrics, as Adam had said, and the same thing happens, a lean construction project doesn't automatically give people a pass, or a project that's going to focus on behaviors and people and be more collaborative. They don't automatically lose the eons worth of construction practices, which have been oftentimes, weaponizing metrics to get people out. There are people that make a living creating dashboards that executives use to fire people. I know those companies. Some of them are Fortune 500 data companies. They're out there, big giant billboards, and some of them even have baseball stadiums or football stadiums named after them or that they sponsor. So you don't have to guess who some of these companies are. But the problem with culture change is that everyone thinks that you can't put numbers to it, that it's not quantifiable, and you're totally incorrect. You absolutely can. You can quantify anything. There is a whole line of statistics focused on qualitative metrics and a science on qualitative. Qualitative means that it's subjective, but you can take subjective measures and put it on a Likert scale, a scale of 1 to 5. And there's a reason for statistical purposes. You want to have an odd number so you can have a middle ground for doing averages and a whole bunch of other reasons that are way beyond my introduction, Brittany and Marcus. So that's where I want to go with it so far. And I definitely have some more stories to tell you how I've been harmed, especially surviving a couple litigations. But I'll end it for now and let Nineveh say hello.
Thanks, Felipe. That actually hit home pretty well for me, as I've had similar experiences with regards to. I really like the way you stated that, Felipe, just with regards to like fear in an organization. When I think of like fear in an organization, I think about a couple things, like teams that are not really willing or open to change, but also being so used to your own ways of being tedious with data, and how you gather those metrics in such a tedious way, where you're not really thinking about how impactful your data could be to your organization, and how impactful that data could be to especially your top stakeholders, um, with having the right access to that data. You gather the right metrics, put them on a dashboard, drill through to the underlying data, and just having options like that available. But, I think even more so though, like just starting from the top, I don't really like what I've seen lacking is really just not enough time spent in the discovery process, not enough time spent actually understanding business. I think everyone's just always in such a hurry to just get to the answer and want to say, I want metric A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but not really, fully understanding what it means to have those metrics. And then in addition to that, not enough understanding between business and data. Data might do things that feels more intuitive to them, but then business might handle things a different way. And so there isn't enough like translation between the two, or not enough understanding, I guess. And so that further impacts how you construct your metrics. So those are just a couple things that come to mind.
I'd like to just give Nineveh a plug because she's a strategic data analyst slash philanthropist. And like, like I'm minimizing what she's capable of doing. She is actually a consultant that supports um, large companies, Fortune 500s that like really need to understand their data on a regular basis, and that many times they need it translated for themselves back to them so that they can understand it. And Nineveh simplifies the data for them and helps to story tell what the data is actually telling them. So she's sort of a translator of their data to communicate to organizations what it actually says. So your perspective, Nineveh, is super, super interesting because you're not just limited to the prop tech or built environment industry. You that connection between business and I don't know what the other side is, but the different pieces of the organization, they're going to see metrics in a different way, and I think it's such a poignant point. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Brittany. And it's really cool that you bring that up, because I guess I kind of forgot to relate it to what we're talking about here, prop tech. Literally just thinking about my experiences, and it's cool to continue learning and understanding how the two synergize. Thank you for
I do want to welcome Stephanie to the stage. Welcome, welcome. Um, I think you
Thank
may get a
thank
chance.
you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just wanted to make sure you had a sense of the topic. We'd love to hear from you. Did you want me to reset, or do you feel you have it well in hand?
Um, well, I mean, understanding that what was just described is, there are the people that produce the data, and they tend to be more of a statistician mindset versus people like Nineveh that actually know how to interpret the data in the more broad application that it's intended. Is that fair to say what you're trying to level set in this room tonight?
Yeah, I would say there's that. And then also, at times, I think many of us have either seen or experienced where metrics have been tracked and used against individuals. And so, actually, as we kicked off this room, we were asking people if they have stories that they can share where they've seen this take place, um, just to kind of share the interesting kind of ways that people can perceive data and utilize it. So that I guess that's the other piece of it, Stephanie.
I have a I have a sales background, so yeah, if everybody in the room understands how everything a salesperson does is tracked, leading to their quota, that can then be weaponized against them for why their number may look like their number. That would be the best, general story that I would have about how data can be weaponized. I think in a culture that we're living in, it shows itself in big and small ways, but that would be what I would contribute at this point in the discussion.
Brittany, I've got an example, I guess, that I'll toss out there for the team here, and it kind of it came from as an evolution of a metric that I was really, and I'm still trying to explore how do we pull good metrics on trust level as a team. And so, we've got some team health assessments, and sometimes those can get scientific. Um, what I was doing early on was, meet the Fokkers Circle of Trust think, and I would award a trusted trade title once a week. And then at the end of a month, the lead project manager and the lead superintendent on that job and myself would get together and we would cook hamburgers and hot dogs for the most trusted trade crews and we would flip the script and allow them to we would labor for them in lieu of the vice versa. And I'll tell you, at first it started with just a circle on the wall, and we were really naming names specific, and people really started to weaponize it. And so what we did, we ended up dropping names of people or individuals, we started calling it companies, and once a week we would just have a conversation about each trade partner on the job. And owner was there, GC was there, like we allowed the trade partners to do us just the same, like where are we in their circle of trust. And that vulnerability and being open, when we switched it to companies and we were able to provide facts of this person left a bunch of fast food trash all over their work site, and we were tax planning, so we know exactly who was in what areas and when. And so or this person went above and beyond with a safety, alleviated a safety issue outside of their zone. We celebrated things like that, but at first it did feel like folks took that circle and were somewhat using it to so-called weaponizing it against others. And then at the end of it, we actually created a somewhat of a scientific process. As Felipe noted, we would use um, metrics of like a 1 to 5 in certain areas, and so we got a lot more scientific with, hey, is their area clean? Are they giving us bogus change orders? Are they creating work? Are they solving work? Are they installing quality work? Do they have defect? And we started to kind of pull some different measurements there from just like a trust perspective on the job site. What's the culture feel like? Um, you know, it's really, again, when we can start measuring those behaviors. The problem, at least the resistance that I've found, and would love to hear just Felipe's thoughts on this. But when I go and I start talking to teams about, hey, I want to visualize your work and I want to put it on the wall for everybody to see, people get defensive. And even though it comes from a good place, from my perspective, you know, um, it's like that natural tendency for people to say, well, are you going to weaponize this? Like what, like, why do you want to know what all I do each day? And, you know, the goal is to really, I think Felipe, they say in the Scrum world, and I'm dying to become a Scrum master, so I'll get with you separate on that. That's a room in itself, but twice the work in half the time, right? That's the book I read that really turned me on to Scrum. And so, um, why is it, Felipe, when we, you know, ask people to visualize their workflow, do they get so defensive at first until they're like, oh, okay, like, you know, you're not just gonna give me heck for what I didn't get done. We're celebrating what I did get done, and you're really getting it out of my head. What is it? How do you get by that resistance?
Well, that's an easy first answer, Adam. And thank you. Yeah, we definitely got to connect on Scrum. In American culture and Western culture, project management has been around, you know, since post World War II, really. So really not that long. And what's predominantly taught in business school, which is the predominant thing that you see out there in the media and what people actually learn as they're becoming project managers or going down that field where you're going to be managing other human beings, is this whole idea of, you know, things that even Peter Drucker, who invented management by objective, and then later, like nearly on his deathbed, regretted it and said that it got used the wrong way. And most people, like a game of telephone, used it to harm people and not to help people as it was intended to. But a lot of people don't go back and see what people say on their deathbed, Adam. But I'm here to help bring back all of the regrets so that we don't make those mistakes again in the future. And that's what I said in the beginning. If your culture right now doesn't use visual controls or have metrics that are transparent, and when I say transparent metric, I mean every person on your team knows what that metric means and where it comes from. If you don't have that right now, you cannot jump to making metrics that measure how people are performing. If you make that jump, you're going to definitely hurt people in the process. The first thing is don't jump. Take a step towards creating transparency. There's a reason why in the Scrum framework, transparency is the first foundational pillar. The first thing that you do is you create that transparency so that people know, why is Adam asking me about trust? I am, as the kids say, Adam, very sus. Adam is very sus. Like, why is he asking about this trust circle? And I'm like, automatically, if there's a circle, that means that there's an inside the circle. And like Mr. Fokker, Gaylord Fokker found out in the movie and in the sequel, he was almost always outside the trust circle. So that implies an inside and an outside by definition. And we need people like Nineveh to data whisper and tell us like there's really degrees of being close to the center where trust is high, and you can be out far from the center, like in a galaxy far, far away, where we just don't know you and you haven't had opportunity to show, demonstrate, and earn trust. So that's my short answer. Can you believe that, Brittany? That's the short answer.
Woo!
Really interesting you say that. It's really, I actually really like that Felipe, the whisperer. I'm gonna steal that. Thank you. Um, you know, it's interesting that you say that because I do notice that there is like a lack of empathy, I think, usually when, you know, typically with the whole metrics gathering process, like you want to be empathetic towards the people that are giving you that information when you're asking the questions to say, hey, what is it that you do with this data or on a daily basis, or what's your story behind this data? You know, you want to start it off from a position of, we really just want to make this process more efficient so that you are able to more deeply think through this and use your human creative abilities to come up with the right solutions for the top management. But that's not how the message usually comes across, I think, to your point again, Felipe, yeah, there isn't enough transparency with regards to how those intentions are set. And I think where I've been successful in working with teams has been really using that empathy to say, hey, this is why I'm coming in, and this is why I'm gathering the data, and this is why it's so meaningful, and this is how it can help you. And, this is how it's actually going to empower you and just make you more powerful in your position. And typically that's not the message that's given. And I find that to be very disappointing. So hopefully we'll see kind of things get better in time, but those are just.
If I dare to be a little rogue here, I do think that the whole measurement idea has fallen out of formal education and post MBA programs and MBA programs where they are taught to measure data. Therefore, people that are often in C suites in any kind of a company, let alone a construction entity, they are they don't think there's anything wrong with measuring data, but too many companies do not have a role that would be like Nineveh's role to interpret the data. It is it is a it is a function of a spreadsheet, and whoever the management is controlling that spreadsheet of that data, and therefore those employees attached to the data that's in the spreadsheet. And at least that's been my experience. And I don't think that always looking at it from an enterprise size model speaks to the truth of most industry, which is made up of small businesses and medium sized businesses that would never have the runway to employ one Nineveh, let alone, a team of them.
What a great point. Oh my goodness. I'm
So
loving the
sorry, and
conversation.
I'm done speaking. Alan just joined the room. It's an inside joke between Adam and Alan and I, and I'm done.
All right, that sounds good. All right. So, I'm not part of it, but you're going to have to share it with us a little bit later. What I'd like to do here really quick, Marcus put together for those of you who are watching on live stream, you have an opportunity to see this, and for those of you who are in the room, please check it out. You'll be able to catch us on the recording at any point in time, and you'll see the four ways to notice weaponization of metrics. So I'm going to just list them off here and see what you guys think. Number one is solely looking at data that supports your position. That's one way that weaponizing takes place. Selecting bias on short term data. Oh, selection bias, apologies. Selection bias on short term data. Harmful through personalization, cognitive bias. Okay. And then data is out of context, defining behavior or action. That last one, man, that hits home, Marcus. So thanks for putting that list together. There, that context piece is heavy for me. Jesse, welcome to the stage. We're talking about weaponizing metrics, and for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to join Jesse's rooms on Monday evenings, he talks about tales from the job site, and it's a really, really great conversation. So catch him on Mondays. Make sure to follow him, and we usually have a great conversation. But we're just talking about how have people used metrics, and if you have a story for us here, Jesse. We'd love to hear from you. How have people used metrics in your experience that have been weaponized?
Yes, beautiful. Thank you, Brittany. And thank you for the shout out on Tales from the Job Site. I think everybody here so far has contributed to that, and all are welcome. As you were reading off the four ways that metrics are weaponized, and I say this within full respect, I started thinking about religion, or maybe more specifically, the Bible, and how people can take things out of context or use confirmation bias, et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, that led me down another trail of most things can or rather will be weaponized. Now, as it goes to metrics and data, I have been, there is proof that I've wielded metrics as a weapon against my team. And so, but what was that rooted in? So for me, the purpose or the reason that I was weaponizing the metrics that were in front of me was because I was self-serving, right? My intent was to drive production so that we could save money, because I knew any 30% of anything saved over gross margin, some of that went into my pocket. Now, I've matured a little bit. I have some highlights, some gray hair now, and realize that actually valuing and investing in the people yields better results, and people actually like me. Um, so as it comes, in terms of weaponizing metrics, I really, metrics themselves are neutral until the human being picks it up and contorts it with their ego and their self-interest. Um, and even I know Felipe works in the lean space, and Adam, a lot of us are familiar with that. And it's a common question, like, show me the data, show me the metrics that this is going to work. And so I've been flirting with this idea, and maybe it's a question to the group about, where's the data or the metrics on the number of construction professionals that don't work on a holiday, that don't miss a baseball game, that don't, how should I say, self-medicate to get through their job.
Give me some.
Uh, that you got it. So I just feel like, yes, metrics are valuable. They tell a story, and again, like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So we can contort that in all kinds of ways. And so my thought is, are we measuring the right things? I'm just saying, I'm done speaking.
Are we measuring the right
That's beautiful.
things?
I want to just give Jesse a data point on his question. So 3 Valentines in a row, I dragged my poor wife to the Home Depot. And now every time that Valentine's comes, she always says, "Is there a Home Depot trip in my future?" so,
Player.
so I've been fighting that. If we would have had this conversation 10 years ago, Jesse, you could have saved me so much heartache. But it's not too late to learn, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Jesse.
I think the points that have been made, you know what? I like that Home Depot trip. I'm with your wife, Felipe. Marcus, we can go this evening after we're done with Clubhouse, okay? Just so you understand.
No, no.
Oh man. But I like the question that Jesse raised about, like, what metrics are important to track in the first place. I think I think that that's a big disparity. Lots of people track things not not understanding what the purpose is to track the metric in the first place. Like, why are you tracking this? What do you want to incentivize, inspire, encourage, reward based upon what it is that you're planning on tracking in the first place? If you have a good purpose for the planned documentation, right? Then you have an opportunity to use that bit of information, that data, with context in order to drive a behavior, and might I say a culture, that supports the way that you'd like for people to work and people to continue to use that type of data. A couple as I've been sitting here, I've been thinking of a plethora of examples that I've experienced in my life. The Home Depot one, we have to work on that one. We need to start tracking that metric. How often we go to Home Depot. Maybe our Home Depot credit card might show some of those metrics. um, but
With the family members, Brittany, that don't want to go. That's what's important.
well, Marcus doesn't want to go. That's the thing. I'm the one who's always like, let's go to
Yeah,
Home Depot.
on a typically religious holiday, so maybe we Marcus and my wife need to have a conversation.
Maybe, just maybe. Okay, so trying to get back on track here, guys. Okay, so my example that I wanted to share, man, I have so many. Um, where data has been um interestingly used, let's say that. I liked what Felipe was talking about from a qualitative versus quantitative data perspective. I feel like somebody else talked about that too. Um, okay, I'll use this one. So, risk management, or opportunity management. That is a really, really interesting way to track metrics. And oftentimes I'll use like the conditional formatting formulas in Excel. Not because I'm smart, but because I've been able to figure it out from another spreadsheet that was offered up to me. Um, those are really great for like that 5 second, 5 feet away capturing of like, where are we on this particular risk? And are we mitigating it? Are we seizing the opportunity as a result of this particular risk? Um, I'll tell you, when I started off using this risk management methodology where we're tracking likelihood and severity and assigning a particular owner to manage that risk, I had such a hard time with getting people to look at the risk log in the first place, to even acknowledge that these things were risks in the first place. They were really scared that something was going to come back on them if they were documented in the first place. So I had to really get buy-in. What I had to do is document it on behalf of everyone on the project in the first place and get them to see that, yes, if we don't address these things, we're going to have long-term challenges that might affect cost, might affect schedule. And if we don't address it now, guess what? We're going to be in some deep. Where's your buzzer, Felipe? In some deep. Oh, you missing out, Felipe. There you go. There you go.
Adam thinks he's got the high pitched.
Yes.
Oh, it's coming, Felipe. You missed that. It's on.
That's it. We're going to be in some deep. Yes. So there you go. So it took a few months after I started reporting it on behalf of everyone, and I started asking everyone who to review it, to read it, come back with comments. And after a while, I was like, we're going to sit down and review all of these risks together in a meeting because we have to understand exactly the context, where it's coming from, what the drivers are, what the possibilities are, like what are the impacts, right, as a result of this, and really get some owners here to really um, take some steps forward to figure out what's next so that we can manage the thing. I did that over a few months, and thankfully, people started seeing the benefit of it. What these metrics, when just tracking, okay, what's the likelihood of this taking place and what's the severity, and how can we communicate the steps that have been taking place in order to actually like take care of the thing, how beneficial that is when we're communicating to leadership about what we need their help on to actually escalate and um either just get some advice, right? Like how do you want to deal with this? So if anything, like that has been a great tool for me over the years to to manage things that people don't want to focus on, that tend to be looked at as a negative thing. But the fact that we had not only the colors to see it quickly, but also that context, and also to see that people were making some progress steps towards taking care of the risk and or uh, reviewing the opportunity for because of the risk. I don't know, I saw the advantages, and I'm really thankful that no one ended up using those risks on the risk log to weaponize, but they recognized that people were actively working on these things on a consistent basis. So that's my story. Would love to hear some feedback.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brittany. Again, it kind of speaks to that transparency conversation, right? Like when people are they become hesitant to, if I put it up there, I might have to own it, and which ironically is the whole point. Now we have somebody to own it and drive it, not that we can celebrate their failures, but that we can all encourage and hold one another accountable for results. And so that's the resistance. I'm dying to hear Felipe's perspective on this, because that resistance is real, and um, I often find myself fighting through that with project teams on how much we visualize, and how we celebrate that, and more importantly, learn from the metrics and not use them to beat anybody.
Well, that's the thing. For leaders that set the tone, like Brittany took up that risk in her story, like I'm gonna not give up on this thing, and she just beat a dead horse until she finally beat people into submission to pay attention to a spreadsheet, which is it's kind of funny in of itself. I like that story, Brittany. Like you're like, we're gonna talk about this risk spreadsheet. I'm not gonna go away. I'm gonna keep coming back. And people are like, wow, she's serious. So what that did is it actually built trust. And she was consistent in her message. She was spending leadership capital. Leadership capital is a way to think about money, but not real money. It's like monopoly money, except less real, but more powerful. And she put her reputation, her relationships on stress to get people to pay attention for the benefit of the project. And of course, I bet that it was part of Brittany's job as well. And there's an incentive there for somebody to not let that freaking risk spreadsheet go. Because I know, like, everybody wakes up in the morning and then of us like, oh, I can't wait to look at that risk data set. It's so exciting.
Yes, I
Right?
want to see all the blood on the dashboard. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Felipe,
So you've got, go
I,
ahead.
I see what you. I mean, Brittany invested, right? You're saying, hey,
She
Brittany took
invested and she
ownership.
spent, I mean, she spent some of her capital and it might not have paid off. She took a risk herself, pun intended. I don't have the rim shot today, but she took a risk to get people to pay attention and help identify things that could derail her project to the benefit of the job. But it's so not normal that she looked like an alien to the people on her project. And that in and of itself is culture change. And for those of you that are doing any kind of metric with the team, you're going to be the alien. Like every time, that's why I call Nineveh a data whisperer, because she's like the Rosetta Stone of the objective reality to how the executives can understand the information she's bringing back to them. And I bet Nineveh's got a good story to bring that to life, don't you?
I feel like, yeah, it's, I keep going back to the whole data was thing. Philippe, I'm just loving it. Thank you. No, it's, I actually just want to quickly commend Brittany for actually playing so many roles. I don't know if anyone notices this, but her identifying the right POCs for the data is, you're kind of addressing it more from like a data governance perspective, right? But then you're also digging into the data, so you're diving into data governance. You're kind of multitasking here. It's a multifaceted kind of approach where you're also the data person identifying the risks, but you're also setting the tone for change. You're putting your people first. That's where some of the change management is needed. And then, you're thinking about like, what are the risks? And, in my experience, people tend to think more about the short-term solutions than the long-term solutions. Just wanting to get things done now and not thinking about how that could be, how that could impact them in the future. Or even having management set that tone of, of the importance of thinking that way. But then, where Britt also took the risk to help others identify things, to help derail the project. Yeah, I mean, oftentimes when you are in that position, and I can speak well from experience, that I typically do feel like the alien in that position. That's very well said, Felipe. And, there's just a lot to just say about that. You know, there's just a lot that one needs to navigate when in that role, because you're not just thinking about the data, you're also thinking about what direction to navigate in. You're thinking about, who do I talk to? How do I bring this to someone's attention? How do I ask the right, am I asking the right questions? And, how can I take, what approach do I take in terms of like continuing to compound on those questions and really get to that end result? And then, really when we're thinking about, even with like having bias in your data, like Jesse touched on this earlier, when just asking about like, are we like reporting the right metrics? There's a lot of, bias that goes into information. Like, are you fitting your data to the hypothesis? Because that would be a very easy thing to do. You can lie with your data. Do you have a quality control team that is actually holding you accountable for the data that you're reporting on? Or are you just, giving the metrics and calling it a day? And I think the position that I'm often in is where I'm not just gathering data and forming metrics off of it, or even asking the right questions. I'm also quality controlling my data, because often not enough importance is placed on that. I'm just going to end it there.
But if I could just say, Nineveh, don't you think it has to do? You start off by saying you were speaking to Brittany's character. It has to start with the intentions of the person first, at whatever the leadership role is, and how that data is used or weaponized or not weaponized or shared, or whatever the issues are. It does begin with the mindset and the mentality of the leader.
Yeah.
And Brittany could show up as a different person using that data, and she wouldn't even be in this room.
Yeah. No, I agree, Stephanie. And like it's not just setting the intent, making it clear, but I could be the consultant coming into the project and saying, this is important. This is why you need to, this is why you need to gather metrics. My voice won't be as impactful as the voice coming from the top of that, team's chain. I've worked with a team in the past, several years ago, where nobody was really interested in really learning new technologies or reporting at more of a high level with their metrics, because it just wasn't needed at the time, and they were very comfortable with what they were doing, and there wasn't a lot of incentive, a lot of excitement to want to take it to that level, honestly. And also, just with regards to meeting regulatory demands, like, they had what they needed, and why would you, spend more time, learning more? It just takes more time, and so it really took that voice from that team, who was very technologically savvy, someone who had just came in, more of a new person who came in, and who really inspired the team to want to think outside of that box, and to want to take it a step ahead. And so it really does kind of matter where that voice is coming from as well. But yeah.
Yes. And I want to add, Brittany, and something that Mr. Adams said that triggered this thought is, you were talking about spreadsheets and conditional formatting, and clearly that's a language that you speak and understand. And kind of to Felipe's term of endearment of the data whisperer, right? As the leader, the leader sets the tone. They set the behavior. When they display the behavior that they're seeking, you can unlock all kinds of magic. Now, the leader also has to have like the peripheral awareness to contextualize the data to the person in front of them. And so, when Adam, you talked about how do you visualize the data, I know that there was a time in my career where if you came to me with a spreadsheet, even if it was on paper, you lost me, bro. Like I ain't got no room for what you're selling. But Brittany, what it sounds to me is you were, of course, this was important to you and you understood the value it was going to bring to the team. So you're an advocate of the information and you knew the purpose that it would serve and the value it would provide to the team, even though they couldn't see it. But maybe that's a question. How did you contextualize the information? And maybe were there more than one medium that you used to get people to connect to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I did. I categorized the information in ways. As an example, we had some long lead items that um, this was a long time ago, so it wasn't during the pandemic, but we had some long lead items where we were unsure as to the actual length of time because we hadn't ordered it yet. But we were actually in design determining which particular spec we were going to go with, but we knew the ones that we were looking at had long leads, so we called that out as a risk. We also that's an example. What I did for schedule risks, I quantified how many schedule risks we had. So if I said, "Hey, yep, there are 10 schedule risks on this project," guess what? The likelihood is high for these 10 schedule risks. Guess what? You guys won't be able to make the project in on time because these are 10 schedule risks. Is that a problem for the entire team? Yes. Let's figure out which ones we can address. Right. Same thing with cost, same thing with quality. And I just rolled that stuff up so that people could see it really quickly in snapshots so that we could then say, okay, well, let's figure out how we can actually like make this project work with all of the things kind of backing up against us. So yeah, absolutely. I had to break it down in our meetings. I had to roll that data up. That's important for people to digest it in a way that um, they could actually get their heads around it and then get into the details. I couldn't ever start with the details.
Yes, details, right? To some of us, too much detail, brain off. Uh, so awesome, fantastic job, Brittany. I was digging for a story. May I share a metric problem?
Please.
All right. So back when I think I was a plumbing foreman at the time, plumbing piping foreman. We had we developed this. The organization I was with had this productivity tracker, and it was simple math, right? It was division of total labor hours per task code divided by the percentage complete gave you a labor ratio. And so the goal obviously was to beat a one, because one was making budget. Anything over a one was losing money, and anything under a one was making money. Pretty simple. And so to drive the thought was, let's drive productivity by offering an incentive for people that maintained a productivity ratio below zero point 0.9 for at least X amount of labor hours spent in a quarter. And so, can you believe that labor ratios dropped significantly? And the award, the check, it was like a $5,000 check was given to the person that had the best number across the business. Right? They had multiple business units in Texas and I think one in Phoenix at the time. And so this went on for about 3 quarters. And then all of a sudden, fourth quarter comes and everybody was at 90% complete for the entire project. And then their productivity ratios would go from 90% to 90.2% to 90.3%. I'm sorry, and so their productivity ratios ended up in double digits. So no longer was it below a 1, it was 23.00. In most cases, the projects ended up losing money, and the biggest bust was in production. Anybody surprised by that?
No, and not really, actually.
The prize goes to Jesse for the great story, just to show how these things are weaponized and misused, misunderstood. You blew it up, Jesse. Good.
And by the way, I didn't win any of those checks. I'm innocent in that scenario.
But again, Jesse, it's cool that you point that out and point out that there was an award, and that that people can actually see their productivity, the performance, on a dashboard or on paper, however it was presented, that it was visible and it was transparent, it could be seen. But at the end of it all, it incentivized them to want to go that extra mile. Whereas, not a lot of times it doesn't always play out that way. And, don't really know kind of like, why am I working towards this? What is the end game for me, so to speak? I'm helping the company get here, and sure, that'll make them more money, but at the end of the day, I'm still getting the same paycheck. So why put in more hours? And I think it's cool to see how that scenario.
Yeah, it was what it did was it triggered the greed within people. And so they figured out real quick that all they had to do was some funny math, pull out their calculators, because this was back in the day of, I think even before flip phones. So you just did simple division to get the number you wanted to get. They were not achieving the production rates that they were selling. They were just manipulating the numbers. And so the incentive drove behavior contrary to what the organization was seeking. And again, what's the purpose and what's the culture, right? So I also have to add that company did have an amazing culture on the surface, but clearly that scenario showed that there were some deep-seated issues that still hadn't been worked through. And so it can be manipulated, just like PPC of the last planner system. We can manipulate it to make ourselves feel good, but it's kind of like pay me now or pay me later. Either way, you're gonna pay. Now, to their credit, that company was extremely transparent. I mean, I learned how to connect ordering my material, planning out my work, and how that connected to dollars in my pocket, because I had access to any and all the information I wanted related to the project that I was responsible to. And just because I like to play with things and figure things out, I was able to decipher that information and use it to plan better and develop my skill. Really, I was just trying to put money in my pocket, but I think by default, I ended up understanding how to connect a projection to actual on the slab installation. And that is a result of that company being very transparent and trusting of their people. But that wasn't always the case, Jesse. And
So, for everyone listening to all these stories, if you're working in a company, just assume that metrics are going to be weaponized. Start with that assumption. Go skeptical. There's been zero stories shared about how, oh my God, we did metrics and everything was great. No, there aren't that story. You have to still do the harder part, which is the trust building. That part you can't skip. Metrics don't help you do that. Your behaviors and your beliefs and attitudes are first. Your belief is actually first, and then your actions follow your belief. It's never the other way around. So if you have a culture of low trust, that's what you have to work on first. You have to be vulnerable, as Brady and I have talked about elsewhere, so that you can demonstrate to people that I'm not going to go away. I might lose some respect here, but this is worth it. This is why I believe this is worth it. And with your help, if you join me, we can make this thing better. Then you bring in metrics that make sense if you're being genuine. And if you're an executive, the metrics that matter for your business, absolutely do not jump over those. Business metrics are absolutely vital and important. And a healthy business has metrics. Everybody, Stephanie, whether they know it or not, is in sales. Some of us just don't know we're in sales yet, but everybody to some degree is in sales. And you've got to be cognizant that if I'm not delivering value, there's nothing else to do. This business will cease to exist. Even nonprofits and B corporations are out there to serve, but as soon as they are not serving, they become irrelevant and they will vanish like the dodo bird. So I say, down with the dodo birds. Business people, become aware of what metrics are important and share those metrics transparently with people in your business that can affect the performance, and let them know, like, you like being here. We like having you here. Oh my God, that's a win-win situation. Let's do more of this. Let's have more fun. When I'm teaching people some of the metrics in Blast Planner system production controls, like PPC, plan percent complete, I tell the teams honestly that the everyday project that they're in right now, and the last project they were on, if we take and I explain to people how the metric is derived, I say your typical construction, that schedule that Brittany worked on for so many years as a project controls professional, is only about 48 to 54% accurate on any given day and any given activity. And that's based on the long sets of data, big data sets. That's very typical. So I say, if you want to just be better than the everyday construction project, all you got to do is be better than 54%. And we show people real examples of if you even do it at 60%, keeping your promises, your flow is already better than average. Anything above 54% is strikingly better than average. And we have a high reliability, and we want people to be completely productive, successful, and freaking proud, or proud of the work they're doing. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's be proud. We're going to spend so much time. If I'm going to miss another Valentine's Day to get that pump so that the basement doesn't flood, so that I can have a good weekend with my spouse, I'm going to do that. Honey, get my keys. We're going to the Home Depot. I'm Felipe.
I hope she heard.
You know, I was just, something came to mind when you were just talking, Felipe, about just you know, delivering value and you know, being relevant and being productive. You know, when we think about metrics and forming more metrics, you know, the one thing that comes to my mind is that, you know, you obviously, you know, if you are looking to really enhance your data, you're also looking into new technologies, perhaps technologies that your team isn't very used to using. And so, you know, upskilling could really give your team that confidence it needs, to not just improve productivity and like form more confident teams, but by leveraging the new technologies, you know, you're helping your employees really, you know, engage in ways that they haven't done before and make them feel relevant. It's one thing, you know, that I've come across as well is people are so used to using like Excel spreadsheets that, you know, they just think, oh, you know, if all of this goes into a dashboard, or if we start really enhancing the quality of this data and really reporting on these metrics, what does that mean for my position? Um, so yeah.
To your audience, right? And like, my head's going so many different ways. I love the conversation. I keep diving into systems thinking, and everything we do is in systems format, right? All processes, construction as a whole is one big system. And how do we, there's two types of systems. One's a virtuous system that lives on forever because it has the right feedback cycle. And then there's a vicious system that doesn't have the correct feedback cycle, or more, maybe it's measuring the wrong metrics, or maybe pulling the wrong metrics, or weaponizing metrics, and that vicious cycle spirals out of control. And so I would encourage this team to dive into some of there's a book called Thinking in Systems. It's amazing. Donella Meadows, maybe. It's a great book.
That is correct.
Have you read it,
Meadows.
Felipe?
Of course
Have
I
you read
read
that
it.
book? Man, what wonderful work, and how appropriate. Like, metrics are feedback, right? Like, and here's the other thing that I keep forgetting to mention because I get so intrigued by the conversation is, like, feedback is really, really difficult to receive, especially feedback that's spot on. And so when you get feedback, sometimes it might feel like somebody's weaponizing it. And I say that with, like, I'm the last person in the world that, like, I take constructive criticism, but man, I'm gritting my teeth, and it's hard for me to just say thank you and not want to, like, spit back and like reply to it. Instead, that's one thing I learned with Mr. Schroeder over the last 2 weeks in his boot camp is, hey, how to receive feedback, and when it, like, just saying thank you. It's somebody's opinion, it's somebody's perspective, it's relevant in the universe, and when you hear it consistently, maybe that's a point that you might want to work on. And so, and I found out, like, a different perspective of myself from a lot of different people, and that is really, really hard to face and understand and accept. And so sometimes, and again, I encourage this group to think outside the box here, right? Because we get so enthralled, like they say, the fish. Dean Reed says the fish is the last one to discover water because it's like immersed, and so maybe we're immersed in this metric conversation where maybe some of these metrics are good, but maybe we're just feeling like maybe somebody might be weaponizing them against us. And again, I say that with the utmost respect for people and belief and agreement with everything that people have said in their scenarios, and maybe just Felipe in the crowd a little bit, poking, trying to get some conversation started. But it is hard to receive feedback, and I would encourage us when we recognize in somebody, and people talk about the compliment sandwich, and man, how wrong that is. To, like, it takes away the effect of the feedback, and so I would encourage us the next time that we hear feedback to just respond with a simple thank you. I appreciate that perspective, and move on. And when you hear that enough, to actually make adjustments in how you act as a leader. And so servant leadership. Again, I was on a call earlier today. In fact, Alan got me on it, and it was about leadership. And I also hear us looking like aliens, and I mentioned a YouTube video that Alan said brightened his day. So I don't know if anybody's had a long day or you're expecting a long day, maybe hold it for tomorrow. But it's called Leadership by Dancing Guy, and it's awesome. I don't know if Alan wants to pop up on the stage and shed a little reflection, but it was fantastic. And I've just again, for what that's worth. So I'm Adam. I'm going to free the stage, the platform anyway, to others here.
So
Can I just say something for a second based on the whole sales thing and picking up on what Adam just said? I completely agree that there are metrics. In my own example in sales, the only difference was the leaders, in my opinion, were measuring something that was no longer as valid. And in this case, it was cold calls, not respecting that social media was really the more formidable way to approach their audience. But they insisted on every detail that was put into Salesforce, which was spit out in those reports, were based on a cold call criteria. So I couldn't agree more. The data has to be there, but I think the underlying question has to always be, is it the right data? Why are we measuring this? Is this the data to be measured?
But then it kind of comes down to also just having, and I agree, Stephanie, I was just going to add on to your points, of just saying that, when asking the question of, is it the right data, it really just comes down to, you know, uh, holding the other person like holding someone accountable, the person who is delivering those metrics. How is that data being quality controlled, or who is providing that assurance, as to validate that whatever metrics are being used, that underlying data is tested and is reviewed by the right peer groups, and so that is not a miss. And so you're just not looking at Salesforce data, but you're also looking into more of like the underlying uh, root cause of that metric.
Leadership and self-deception, Felipe. Can I get an amen? Do you have a choir in there?
Amen. Somebody put that on my desk, Adam, and I was telling Jason Schroeder about this, and they never told me who it was, and I never knew who gave it to me, and I kind of left it there, like not. It looked like a weapon. And I felt like I was getting punked, and there was a hidden camera somewhere. So I never picked it up, and then like 2 months later, it was gone. It came into my life, and then it disappeared.
That was
Funny how that works.
Oh, that is a beautiful book. Adam, quick question. You mentioned something, you called it a compliment sandwich. Is that the same thing as the poo-poo sandwich? Like you got a slice of good, a slice of poo, and a slice of good?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That takes the effect away, right? That's like, hey, Jesse, I know you're really good. You've been doing this for 20 years, and man, I respect that knowledge, but and then let me deliver you some radical candor feedback and try to pretend like I actually care personally. I mean, that's like, I don't know. It's cheap and it takes away from the effect.
Is
So,
that an inside plumber delicacy joke?
No, no, it's not an inside plumber joke. I mean, in my plumber's days, I would call it a shit sandwich because the painful feedback is in the middle, covered with a little bit of sweetness. Uh, but I agree with you, Adam, 100%. Like, if you're gonna hit me hard, and give me some actionable, candid feedback, and I may grit my teeth, but it's kind of an exercise in hear me now and listen to me later. Like, I may not be prepared. Actually, it's pretty damn guaranteed that I'm not prepared to receive it in the moment. But when on my drive home or on my run in the morning, I'm really going to be able to digest and internalize that feedback. But if it's powder coated at all, I will dismiss it outright, and to my own detriment. But that's how I.
And it's back to culture building, right? It's back to knowing your audience and how they are willing to receive the information. It's being um cognizant of the state they're in when you're giving the feedback. There's so many nuances there, but it's building back to what Felipe was talking about, building a culture of trust. When you build a culture of trust, you can simply say, "Can I give you some feedback?" and deliver the feedback. Anyway, Marcus, I pass the ball to you.
I just want to have Nick, and Nick's been on the stage for a while and wanted to have him speak. And then Alan also came up on.
I'll jump in real quick if Nick's not available right now. This is Alan speaking. I just want to jump in and add to Adam's very niche leadership reference here. Leadership from a dancing guy. When we talk about leadership, we want to think about who our first follower is, and you'll get it if you watch the video. But also, when it comes to feedback, it's not about the people that you want to get feedback from to you can't rely on them to volunteer this feedback because you have to create that sense of psychological safety first. And for leaders, what that manifests as is that leaders themselves have to consistently show up and ask them for feedback. and also show that their feedback is being listened to and implemented. Because if you ask for feedback and then say okay, thank you, and then just do nothing with that information, you're never going to get feedback again. So just wanted to offer that. And I do have to drop, but always happy to listen in here. Alan.
Preach, Alan.
That's like he dropped back down. I love that. So Nick, you just come off mute when you're ready to talk. We'll be here for you, buddy. I just wanted to tell Adam that they're only. Oh, Nick's ready. Go, Nick.
I, I really have nothing. I just got here a couple minutes ago, and I'm just enjoying listening. So please continue.
You got it, buddy. Adam, there's only one good and one bad example of a system that lives forever. We'll start with the bad example first. Cancer. Okay, there's the bad one. The good one, the system that's self-generative and seems to live on forever, as far as I can tell, is life. That's it. Everything we're doing will become dust at some point and vaporize when the sun engulfs Earth. So we got to help Bezos stay focused off Amazon and get that tourism to the moon going, so we can start colonizing out and help keep the competition alive with Elon as we go to Mars and get further away from the sun.
I like where this is headed, believe it or not. Depending on beliefs, Felipe, we're a million miles from metrics right now, but I love it so much.
Well, we were talking about systems that you brought up, Adam. So I just wanted to have that there. And like people, we've been saying on this whole weaponizing metrics, remember, just assume they're weaponized, all of you. And then go from there with the people. Don't give trust without letting it be earned. There's nothing wrong with that. Spend the time to get to know you people you're working with and make those relationships real and communicate back up the chain. A lot of people, and I had a conversation, Stephanie, you reminded me, with some newer executives about some salespeople, and they had said like you need to make 30 phone calls a week, cold calls, and they didn't tell the employees why. All of a sudden, I told them, I said, from the employee's perspective, and your employees didn't call me and complain. I'm just giving you feedback that you didn't ask for, unsolicited feedback, the worst kind. And I just said, from your employee's perspective, they had a job that you hired them for, and then suddenly you changed the job, and now you have a metric and a dashboard, and they know intuitively that they're going to be harmed by what you did. You didn't pay them anymore. You didn't take anything else off their plate. And now you're telling them to do something that they've never done before. Asking engineer minded people to make cold calls is not something for the average engineer to do, unless your last name is engineer, and then that's just fun. But and they were like, oh, we didn't even think about that. And I said, where did you get this idea that 30 was a good number? And they read about it in a book. And I said, did you even finish reading the book yet? And they hadn't even finished reading the book yet. And I said, did you share the book with your employees? Why you're doing it? Did you share the why that's important to do?
And they hadn't even shared the why yet.
And they hadn't even shared the why. And once they did that, all but one employee changed their behavior and saw how it benefited them as a team. And they realized that they did, in fact, have responsibility for sales, as was kind of implied, which the executive said, it's obvious. It's like, well, it's not obvious if I've been doing this job for months and months and some of them years, and then suddenly you switch the game on me. I didn't get the memo that the game was changed. So that's a good lesson for anybody that's about to start metricing.
Amen, Felipe, and bravo to that person who was being metriced. I think that's a thing, to be metriced. If not, it is now. And because he spoke up, right? Like, and because if the leaders, the executives, are not creating environments, and we've talked about this, right? The trust, the transparency. If us as leaders are not creating this, Alan said it beautifully when he coined psychological safety.
we have got to create environments where people can feel free to pull the andon cord, if you will, to stop the entire construction process, to fix one problem that is finding itself over. Like, again, there's some, but it's about these environments, and again, from a systems thinking perspective, and then trying to tie that, Felipe, into a capability development. I've been going down this Charles Duhigg route and this James Clear route, which is pretty neat to figure out how habits tie into developing capabilities, and how you can tie the habits into systems, and break down what the feedback, and it all is starting to kind of dawn on me, especially with Jason's boot camp. And again, this feedback playing, like giving intentional feedback. I would bet not many of us give intentional feedback every day. Like serious feedback where that other person might get a little upset if I tell them this, but they probably need to hear it. And so, um, do we do that as leaders? Do we create environments where people can tell us what that is? Because this was a big part of, like, and then are we authentically ourselves, right? Somebody mentioned, maybe Marcus or Brittany, the state, like being in this mindset, and having this, like being in the moment, being present, having all things centered, focused into the good of what we're doing at the moment. And are you in that spot, and are you challenging others to give 100%? Do you even know what their 100% is? So um, I think it's this whole, lean thing we've done, in focused a lot on the tools, and not sure that we've focused a lot on getting outside our comfort zones, into past the fear, into the learning and growth zones. So I'll leave it at that. I'm Adam, and I'll yield the floor.
Adam, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna pass the ball to you, Marcus.
Good job. Power call.
Are you two in the Home Depot?
That's where we're trying to go. We're just gonna get ready to close down this room. Just try to do a plus delta real quick. Um, I, in a way, Adam did his, but if there anything else, Adam, you want to add to the plus delta, please let me know.
No, sir. Love the room.
Thank you, Felipe.
Yeah, I love the stories that people shared, and I'm glad I'm not alone in getting beat to death with metrics. So I appreciate everybody. The only delta is I wish I would have known sooner. I would not have been tardy. So that's my delta. Sorry, I'll pay better attention. Thank
Yeah, yeah, Britt and Marcus, I just wanted to say thanks for the platform, and thanks as usual for bringing so many amazing, like-minded people together. It's always a blast being in your room.
I'm
Stephanie,
excited to step my game up next week, Marcus.
I'm looking
That's
forward
where
to that. I really am.
we'll see. Would love to hear Stephanie's feedback.
I just for all rooms, I think that there is, as I keep saying, more and more people that we sort of collectively are circling the wagons, that we start to create levers that come out of these rooms, whether it's a list of books or the book ideas that are coming out of it, and then we have a more formalized way of sharing them with the group, so that we can keep them, not only the match lit, but the fires going, not the wildfires, just the fires burning amongst us, so that we come back all the more learned, 6 months from now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse.
Yeah, I've got two pluses and one delta. So one plus is Adam's commitment to share what you taught him, Marcus, in terms of this magic recording stuff. He is committed to enhancing his learning by teaching me what he's learned from you. The other is being able to hear, or rather feel, Nineveh's appreciation and connection to data and human beings. That is really moving. Thank you for that. The delta is one for me. I've been working very diligently to minimize my cursing, and I failed to do that this evening. But I appreciate y'all's grace in having me here and letting me speak. Jesse, I'm out.
Jesse, is that something we can help you from an accountability perspective?
You're breaking up. I'm losing.
Is that
I,
something that we can help you from
don't.
an
He's
accountability
being
perspective,
sarcastic.
How
Jesse?
how
I got
how
a
how can
spreadsheet,
I
Jesse. I've already
right?
tracking your curse words. It's $1 for every violation.
How are we weaponizing the metric at the end of the day?
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Brittany.
You wanna do Nick?
Hey, can I
Nick,
ask one Clubhouse? Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
this is Nick's cooking time usually. Adam,
Can I? So, are we supposed to change our photo often? I mean, I see Jesse kind of mixing it up. Brittany kind of stays the same. Felipe, I think Stephanie stays the same. Marcus, you mix it up a lot. What's the, uh, I guess, etiquette there? Is there like, is that like a rule? Or is that something we need to be aware?
absolutely not. I have skills as a photographer, so I can just change my photo anytime I want.
Pull to refresh, and you'll see my end.
Yeah, likewise for me.
Understood, I think.
We'll give you
We'll
the
see.
shortcut.
Have you
There's a picture, your
pulled down,
profile
Adam?
picture in the top right. We'll teach you, Adam. You pull down,
Yeah,
hit
awesome.
anywhere in that white space and pull down.
No, I'm good. I see everybody changing, but I just again don't
We'll get you.
understand.
We'll get you the shortcut
One
when we're
person
not
asked
getting
me to
recorded
like,
by Marcus.
perfect. I appreciate that. Hopefully, Marcus can do not just photography but video editing of some things.
I can. I don't. Brittany, you can probably turn off the recording, and I can help.
All right, hold on.
It's all good.
Let's
I'm vulnerable. I love it. Again, your rooms are awesome. I appreciate it. I'm gonna drop off. I yield it.
Thank you guys so much. I just want to thank everybody out in live stream land who's watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and LinkedIn. We appreciate all of you. We are meeting tomorrow in our Smart City Community Club and then Prop Tech Club on 7 a.m. Central on Thursday. Don't miss out as well. On Friday, we'll be doing a live stream talking about the connection to tokenization in real estate, but also Stephanie and Mark will be hosting a regular conversation on Friday at 2 p.m. Central. So join us. There's plenty of things most everybody knows, but those of you who don't know and are out there in live stream land, please get on Clubhouse. These are the awesome conversations you can participate in, and we want you to be a part of it. So with that, we will be ending the stream.